Welcome to Behind the Smile with Ash Butterss, a podcast designed to reveal the truth behind the masks we wear. Together, we look to demystify the human mind and its behaviours in relation to mental health, trauma and addiction. My name's Ash and I'll be your host as we uncover the real stories of people's pain and the steps they've taken to live a life of freedom in recovery. From sobriety to spirituality, join me each week as we uncover the reasons why people seek recovery and how their lives have changed by living one day at a time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Smile. Today on the show, we have Mike Faria. Mike is a 38-year-old content creator from New Jersey who almost lost his life as a result of alcohol abuse in January 2020. Since being given a second chance at life, Mike has worked to create awareness around the dangers of alcohol abuse in the hope that he can help others who are struggling. Mike's story is truly remarkable, and I'm so honored to have him joining us here on the show. And with that, dialing in from Jersey, I'd love to welcome Mike onto Behind the Smile. Mike, hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am so good. It's amazing to be able to sit down and actually do this interview. We've been connected on Instagram for quite a while now, but to sit down and have this conversation, I'm just so beyond excited to share your story.
I'm excited. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now it's like 9 p.m. for you in Jersey right now. How's your day been?
It's been a great day. I had some free time today. My kids went to hang out with their mother, and it's been a nice, relaxing day. So in this interview, I have a really clear head. I'm focused. I know we've been trying to get this going for forever. Like you said, we connected a long time ago, so I'm excited for it too.
Me too. Thank you so much once again for your time. All right, well, let's dive straight in. Our audience, some of them may know you from your Instagram and your TikTok, but I'd love for you to give our listeners a little bit of an intro on who you are. So can we kick it off with you sharing, where did you grow up? Who do you live with? And what does an average day look like for you?
So I grew up in Kearney, New Jersey, and I live with my two boys, Jaden and Mason, who are 11 and 9 years old. And a typical day here is I get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to work. I do construction, so I run heavy equipment. I'm an operator. I have fun at my job playing with equipment and toys and stuff. And I get home around 4, 5 o'clock, where my father, who lives in Newark, not too far away, helps me with my kids. So he picks them up and takes them to school. He drops them off and stays with them till I get out of work. And from there, we do dinner. Then we go to basketball practice for my older son that is 3 to 4 times a week. And my younger son is just starting soccer now. So, and then we come home and we crash at 10, 11 at night. Sometimes in a good mood, sometimes, it's all boys here, so it gets crazy sometimes. But that's a typical day, and there's never enough time for anything of what's going on. It's just never enough time in a day.
Yeah, and it sounds like single parenting would be quite a lot to manage. I'm so happy to hear that you've got the help of your dad and that he's able to sort of help out with some of those little tasks to enable you to be able to go and earn money and support your family.
Yeah, without my father's help being here physically, it would be very, very difficult for me. So
yeah. You know what? We'll dive into your family because I'd love to understand more about that in a moment. But as we do with all our episodes of Behind the Smile, we start off with talking about a photo. And Mike, this is a photo that I've asked you to bring in today from a time in your life where you are hiding behind a smile. You were projecting one version of yourself to the outside world, but the truth was you were struggling on the inside. Can you please describe for our listeners the photo that you've chosen? What's happening in the photo and what did your life look like at that time?
So the photo I chose is one of me kind of in and out of my coma, the induced coma I was put in when I suffered liver failure. And I chose that photo because one, in my previous life before my traumatic experience with alcohol, I never really took photos. I didn't want to be in pictures. I was very much kind of ashamed of myself and kind of hid from the camera most of the time. I didn't want to be anything, so I don't even have one to reference to nonetheless smile in any pictures. Just the kind of person who I was. I was a very just mad, miserable person. So this photo I chose because it's just a raw image of me suffering on the outside. Everything that was happening internally for so many years finally caught up, and it just oozed out of me physically from my body. And when I mean physically bile and my body shutting down, organs shutting down. So everything that I was hiding for so many years in this picture came out in my physical self, and that's the picture I'd like for people to see, that was what was on the inside for so long, and manifested its way out somehow at some point.
Thank you so much for sharing this photo. It's incredibly vulnerable of you to do so. And I'll have this photo of course, on my Instagram at @Butterss. They can also check out your Instagram, Jersey Mike, to check out your incredible before and after photos. And I'll also put in an after photo as well, because of course our listeners can't see you right now, but I'm looking at you, and the difference between who you are today, and physically as well as I'm sure internally, compared to this image, which was only taken 3 years ago, it blows my mind. So make sure you check that out. You can also head to ashbutterss.com, where those photos and those episode show notes will live. All right, Mike, I want to take it back for a moment now. I want to take it back to your childhood. Can you tell me what was life like growing up for you? How do you describe young Mike?
Very shy, quiet, very kind of timid. I was very, very, very shy. I was just a very, very shy kid. Not aggressive at all, and just quiet. I had a lot of energy as a kid, like I do now. I have a lot of energy. I think I have more energy than my kids, but I was just a shy, quiet kid, and I stayed to myself a lot.
Do you remember what you felt internally at that time? Like, did you feel comfortable? Did you feel uncomfortable? Was there any sort of, we talk about the disease of addiction being this dis-ease or this discomfort internally, and a lot of us identify as having that from a young age. Was that something that you can reflect on and say, oh yeah, I think I would agree?
I would agree. The things that were going on at home just were difficult financially, and the financial thing to my parents having issues, and my father wasn't home very much, and when he was home, he was a very aggressive person. He's very loud, very aggressive, and I'd say a lot of that I was just intaking for years as a kid, and trying to process, but also started to develop a lot of anxiety and a lot of disconnection and detachment at an early age.
And did that play out in any specific way before you found alcohol or drugs? Did you find that you were leaning on other cruxes or processes to sort of get yourself out of your body or get yourself out of even that family situation at home?
Yeah, like in my head, I would kind of cope leaving my head. I think at like a really young age, I was able to kind of turn on and turn off what was going on around me. I learned how to do that with yelling and stuff at home. I was able to disconnect and like shut everything out and kind of go into my own little world where I was kind of okay and numb from what was happening in the reality of my world.
And what age did your parents separate? Because there was a move that happened, wasn't
There
there?
was, they didn't get divorced, but around end of seventh grade, they separated. My mom moved us to Florida, and my father stayed behind. And um, they kind of stayed together, but not together. My dad took care of us financially and had his own place here, and my mom raised us out in one of their homes out in Florida. So at the time when I was in New Jersey, as if I didn't already not have my father in my life enough, when I moved to Florida, then he wasn't around at all, really. And that's when I guess the coping of disconnection and detachment went from that to rebelling and myself kind of now, I guess in a way, just reflecting a lot of what I saw my father do growing up and what I thought a man was, what I thought a strong man was.
Was that around the time that alcohol came into the
Yeah,
picture?
right around that age was when I experimented drinking because prior to that I was a kid that was in Catholic school. I was very much against drinking and drugs. I was very much on the right side of things for a little bit, and then I think when they finally separated, that was like the last straw for me, where I was like, "Well, fuck this." And when I said that, that's when I started to go. You're like, okay, well, maybe let me go drink, let me go smoke, let me go try all of this other shit, and that's when I started getting involved, right in eighth grade.
And tell me a little bit more about what that looked like. Was your drinking and drug taking the same as those around you, or were you more excessive from the
It was
outset?
always more excessive. So, like, if someone, if someone was introducing me to a drug, I was introducing them later to even more than they can handle. That's how the kind of personality type that I had. So like at a young age, freshman year, even though I was drinking, alcohol wasn't at the forefront of my issues at that time. Other drugs were weed and coke and stuff like that. And I think everything that I did, I always pushed to the limits. I always did so much of like if I drank and I blacked out. If I did coke, I did it. I did it all night long for 2 days, and it always pushed everything to the max. Even at that age, experimenting, I couldn't do anything in moderation whatsoever.
I can so relate to that. It's that idea of, for me, when I take a drink, like I get thirstier. And I know that I have a problem with alcohol because that doesn't happen when I drink water. Like if I'm thirsty and I drink water, I'll have a glass and I'll be done. But if I switch that for champagne or beer or whatever, I have one glass and then I get thirstier and I want more and I want more and I want more. And you never have that satiated feeling of like, okay, that's enough. Like you never
No,
get there.
you never get there. What you're searching for in that, what your body might be searching for physically or spiritually or mentally, you don't get there, and you end up, at least for me, I'd end up crashing. It'd be blackout, bad nights, horrible situations, and I never get to a peaceful Zen
Yes.
state that I was looking for, where life was chill and okay and all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm exactly the same. Mike, often addicts are drawn to their substance of choice because it's helping them to mask the pain. I know, like we talk about what we've just said now, of like filling that God shaped hole that sits inside our soul, trying to fill it with different things, but never being able to sort of reach that serenity and that peaceful state. Now, I know that you had a situation happen where you lost someone really important to you at quite a young age. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what happened there and how that affected your drinking and drug taking?
Yeah, I lost a cousin of mine that was like a brother to me, and through all my years of just growing up, we were like brothers, but especially we had a very strong bond through our preteen years and our teenage years and experimenting with things and going through hardships in life. Like we just had a very, very strong bond. And he passed away in a car accident, and it was horrible. It just destroyed my being. I had my whole life and with him in every aspect of my life, from my first child being born, me being in his life with those things like it. We just spent our whole lives growing up talking about our lives together and doing all these things, and he passed away in this accident. That involved alcohol, where everybody was fucked up. The driver was fucked up driving, and they crashed into a tree. They like overcompensated when he was leaning over to oncoming traffic and overcompensated, I think, and went into a tree. And my cousin was the only one who passed away. And it was the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me in my life was losing him. And when you talk about like filling a void, when I was younger, I drank, but my focus was more on other drugs because I had different voids to be filled at that time. That's why it was like coke and things that I was searching for in other aspects of life, like confidence and courage and all of this other shit that I thought I was looking for with other drugs. But when my cousin passed, that was when now I was just searching to not feel. I was searching to escape reality. I was in a different mode than I had ever been in life, and really I was drinking a lot, but really started to drink. I mean, when he passed away, I was probably binge drinking for a good year and a half. Binge drinking, drinking every single day. And I didn't really stop drinking until my son was born, which was about 6 or 7 years later. And I stopped drinking for a year. That was it.
Yeah, I was really similar. It was the sudden death of somebody that was really close to me that set me off on that final push towards finally getting sober. I went into daily drinking for about 2 years, and the problem I found with that is that when you drink and use on grief, it traps the grief inside your body and there's nowhere for it to go. And so even if you aren't drinking, you've still got that pain stuck inside of you. And for me, it's not until I stopped drinking and then I went back and I actually did the work to process the trauma that I was able to heal, and then I didn't need a drink anymore because the feelings and the pain were gone. Like, it still hurts to think about, of course, but it wasn't that all-consuming pain that was coursing through my body every waking minute of the day. And I often share with people in sobriety who are experiencing grief, it's so important to feel your emotions in that present moment, because if you do something to avoid them, whether that's pick up a drink or a drug, or even maybe it's another process addiction like eating, exercising, working too much, then you don't allow that processing to happen and it stays stuck in your body, and then it's going to come out at another time further down the track, and probably at a time that you really don't want it to. So to be able to sit with grief, even though feeling it in sobriety is so incredibly painful because you feel every single part of it, you do manage to heal through it at a much faster rate. Well, at least that's been my experience.
You're absolutely right. And I relate to every part of what you said. The first time I think that I kind of accepted and went through that with my cousin was after my coma, that I was able to process and have the clarity to reflect on it and move forward with it. Where when he did pass away, I was so drunk and so messed up trying to run from that. But you're right. Like, my buddy once said this, like, if you don't process those things, if you don't take care of those feelings, it's like you're leaving your lawn uncut, and that thing keeps growing and growing. And when you go to cut your lawn one day and your lawnmower can't handle what's going on in your yard because you've just left it there and you haven't processed it and it's been growing and growing, it might be too much. for your lawnmower to handle. So
Yeah.
you gotta like go through that stuff.
Exactly right. It's so much easier, even though it's scary, just to do it in that moment. And we've spoken about this idea of filling the void. I'd love to go a little bit deeper into that now. Like, Mike, how do you, because when we get sober, we don't stop having things happen to us. In fact, more things often happen to us, and we have to learn how to process these. And at the same time, that for me anyway, that hole in my soul when I stopped drinking didn't necessarily disappear straight away. How do you fill that void today in your day-to-day life?
By myself to feel, I think that's the biggest one, forcing myself to sit through my anger and sit through my sadness. And with those being the toughest times, they've also started to become more of a habit. And with them becoming more of a habit, they do become easier, but it still sucks. It sucks to have to go through it, but I'm aware now in the moment of when I'm going through it that I have to sit through it. I have to. Like sometimes I'm so angry, I'll be sweating. I'll be red and I'll be sweating. Like here, I'll be in my room and I'll be so infuriated with something that my heart's racing, I'm shaking, I'm sweating, I'm physically going through distress. And I just need to keep telling myself that, I have to go through this for this to go away. There's nothing that is going to make this go away unless I go through it. That's the only thing. There's no pill, there's no drink. I know what it's like to leave my grass being uncut, and I stay active in my lifestyle daily to make sure I feel what I'm feeling.
Yeah. It's almost like that decision to remain present at all
Yeah,
costs.
that's a perfect way to say it, and it's hard to do. It's hard. I could give up my job and taking care of my kids and do that all day and dedicate my life to just trying to like stay well feeling. It's hard to do. At least for me, it's hard to do. But it's also my saving grace when I get through it. The way I feel on the other side after, when I get through the anger, when I get through the depression or the sadness I'm going through at that moment. When I come out of it, I feel amazing. I feel better than ever. I feel 10 times higher than I was low. And that's like where the magic is.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Okay, so you mentioned that you started this sort of heavy binge drinking, and that lasted for about 6 years until your first son was born. Can you talk me through what did that 6 years look like? Were there any major consequences as a result of your drinking? How did you meet someone, have a child, while all of that other stuff was going on?
It was a mess. My life was a mess. It was to even think if I could remember most of it, I couldn't. I was also taking prescription medications for antidepressants and Klonopin and Xanax for anxiety. Then with the drinking, I couldn't hold a steady job. My parents were still helping support me, and I was doing music. I was actually doing music at that time, which was my one kind of positive escape that I would get away and be happy doing besides being drunk a lot. But most of it was all over. It was like such an unproductive, dark time of my life that I suffered a lot of family members not wanting to talk to me, not wanting to. Just I lost so many friends at that time. I lost so many friends that were either disgusted with my behavior or disgusted with my behavior in total, or just disgusted with the way I'd be acting towards them when I would be drinking. Because I was a mean person. I was a mean person, and I just I treated many people in my life horribly that didn't deserve that kind of treatment, and took them for granted. And yeah, I ended up meeting the mother of my kids. But even that was in unhealthy terms. It was based on focused on alcohol. We both like to drink, and we both like that kind of stuff. So that was already a shitty start, with that being the foundation to our relationship. We enjoyed escaping together, getting fucked up together. So it wasn't a pretty time in my life till when my son was coming on the way. Then I knew I had to do something, and I was able to convince myself that if I didn't stop drinking, I wasn't going to be a good dad. And the last thing I wanted after what I experienced, the feelings I had towards my father, was to be the one responsible to put another human being through the same thing that I felt like I had went through. So
So you
I
you
did. I
gave
gave
up
up drinking for
drinking.
a year.
Wow. And what did that look like? Was that difficult to do? Did you just have that motivation, that focus of your son? And did life start to get better at that
It
time?
it was difficult. I went on a little Catholic retreat that helped me kind of focus and get me going to stop drinking. At that time, the withdrawal was really bad. My father, actually, lo and behold, the person that I had so much anger towards growing up, I had treated my mother so badly for so long that she was kind of fed up with my shit at that time. And my father was the one who was like, I'll come help take care of you. And he helped take care of me through that withdrawal. And it was a horrible, like, probably a good week that I was having the shakes and grinding my teeth at night, thinking like my teeth were breaking while I was sleeping. My withdrawals were really, really bad. I'd get really sick and anxious and want to crawl out of my body and die. Like I felt horrible. But I got through it, and in
Mm.
that year, it was hard. It was very hard, but it was a great year. I guess I was able to keep focus on my son, so it kept my mind busy. And I finally got a steady job. I finally, for the first time in my life, I was like steady with work, and I started to, become start heading towards the direction of success, like in a career path and good things. And as soon as I saw that happening, I'm like, cool, let's have a beer now. Everything is good. And that's when I started drinking again.
And how quickly did that start to
It
unravel?
lasted for a long time. It ran for like 8 years, 9 years, 10
Wow.
years.
That's crazy. And your second son, how long did he come along
He
after your
came two
first?
years later.
Okay. And was there ever a thought in your mind, oh, maybe I should try and quit again, like I did when the first
No,
son was born?
I had developed what I felt was a really confident space where I felt I had control of my drinking, even though I'd still like black out from time to time. I'd still black out from time to time, let's say maybe once a week, like on a weekend, or which to me, the drinker I was before, always blacking out. I'm like, I actually got some control here. I'm blacking out, but I'm not going crazy, running in the streets wild at 3 in the morning. So it's like, yeah, I've leveled up here. I
Mm,
have some control. I'm in bed. I wake up in bed in the morning, and it's not too far
mm,
off the map of being uncomfortable for me. So I thought I had this sense of control of my drinking, but it was just a horrible lifestyle. Me and their mom were fighting all the time. We were never really happy. We were always drinking together. We'd sit down, try to watch a show. We'd start drinking. By the end of the show, we're shit faced and both falling asleep, not really
mm,
remembering the end of the night and waking up full of anxiety, ready to face the day, get home and do the same shit every day. It was like a little fucking hamster wheel.
mm,
And it ran like that for
mm.
8 years.
Yeah, I totally relate. I always call it was like Groundhog Day, and you tell
Mhm.
yourself it's not going to happen again the next day, and then sure enough, it repeats exactly the same way over and over and over again. It's that cycle of addiction, and it just seems so insane that we pick up the first drink sober. Like we know what's going to happen, and yet there's this pulling back to the drink or the drug, and then all of a sudden, here we go again. That relationship ended. Can I ask what happened there and how did that affect you mentally and also within your drinking, that
Um,
breakdown?
so in 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 our relationship towards the end, things were just kind of unmanageable. We were miserable. There wasn't even any area of common ground where we can even have a drink together at that point. And that's when things were bad between us. Couldn't really figure anything out on the same page together anymore.
Were you at the time thinking to yourself, like, we'll just stay together until the kids get to a certain
Yeah,
age?
definitely. I, in my mind, was committed to this no matter what. For the aspect of my kids, I wanted to kind of give them what I didn't have, which was this, family dynamic. And I wanted to give it to them at all costs. No matter how unhappy I was like, this, it has to be like this. I can't give up on this. I can't, I'll be a failure. Like I'll have completely failed them. And when
Mm,
things were just from, it felt like was no going back. We were miserable. We weren't stopping drinking. We weren't talking anymore. We tried moving to salvage our relationship. We tried everything in the world. And then it came to a point where there was like infidelity. And when there was infidelity, that's when I had like a breakdown because this thing I was trying to salvage, like now I couldn't repair. Now I couldn't salvage. It was like this broke it. This was done. I couldn't fight for this anymore. I couldn't back this anymore. And I knew that this was done. So when that happened, then I knew I couldn't swallow that and
mm,
make it work for the kids till they were older. I felt like that was it. I'm like, I threw the towel in, especially when I
mm,
felt like I was gonna lose everything I had worked for. These were like the
mm,
between losing my family that I couldn't salvage in my perspective. Now I'm like I'm gonna lose my house. I'm gonna lose everything that I worked for because these were the kinds of things that were going through my mind at that time. And
yeah.
that was it. I drank and I said I'm going to drink till I can get up and figure this out and get through these feelings because it's the way I've always processed feelings. And I'm like, I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna get
Mm.
to a withdrawal and I'll make it. And never, this one withdrawal I couldn't get out of. This one time I couldn't stop.
Yeah. Okay. So that I imagine is where the drinking really escalated again. Can we now move to? I want to go to 2019. So the 12 months that led up to your hospitalization and induced coma. Tell me what was going on for you. What were your days looking like? Were you still able to work? Where were you living? Who were you with?
2019, we had moved back from Florida to New Jersey because things weren't working over there. We had tried to make it work there. It wasn't working. And we came back to New Jersey, and that was summertime, June, July of 2019. And I was drinking every day, but to not not to the way I was towards the end when I was starting to have a mental breakdown. And at that time, I was living with the mother of my kids and my two boys. And right around October, September, October was when I found out about the infidelity. And when I found that out and things started to I was still working. when I found that out and things were starting to get nasty between us, that's when I started drinking a lot. Was end October 2019, which is not that far of a time from when things got really heavy. But I stopped at that time. I mean, I started drinking heavily at that time, and I stopped my job. I went to work, and I told my boss, I told my super, I'm like, I'm a fucking mess. This happened to me, and I'm about to have a breakdown, so I can't be here anymore. I need to be home. And he understood. He drove me to my truck, and I drove home. And I got home, and I remember I got like three 1.75 liters of Ciroc vodka, and I bought a 24 pack of Twisted. I bought enough alcohol to sustain me for like three or 4 days, so I could really like go hard and just be in my zone, be in my own world of escape and leave into my feelings, whatever it was. And I that's when it got bad. That's when I started. I was drinking, vomiting in the morning, trying to hold it down. You know,
What were some of the physical signs?
I started the first physical sign is I'd start to get like really flushed, very flushed. So I'd start drinking and I'd start to taste like a certain kind of chemical taste in my throat that was odd to me. And then I'd start to feel heat in my face, like I'm hot. I'm really hot. And it would only be in the beginning of when I'm drinking. And my face would turn red. I go in the bathroom and boom, my cheeks are flushed. I'm glowing red. And the more I would drink, it would eventually slip away, this reaction, this redness, this reaction would slip away. And I'd drink and then I'd be like, all right, it's whatever. It's not a big deal. But then one day I started getting welts on my body, like hives. And I started getting them on my neck. I started getting them on my arms. And they started off like small hives, the size of mosquito bites. And a couple weeks later, they turned into the size of like baseballs. They were like welts on my body. And they were huge. They were like the size of golf balls on my neck. And they were popping up everywhere. And I'm like, okay, this is something going on with my liver. But I went and bought some Benadryl and took some Benadryl and drank it with vodka. And I took Benadryl and I slammed down some vodka and it went away. And I'm like, okay, good, clear. And that was another sign that I didn't take seriously.
My gosh. And I've seen photos where your eyes are like really yellow and your skin as well. Did that happen sort of within that first couple of months, or was that
That
right towards the
happened
end?
like a month after October. And it happened pretty fast. The yellow
Yeah.
eyes thing happened from one night to the next. I had white eyes one night
Wow.
and I woke up the next day and looked in the mirror and was like, what the fuck just happened? And I'm looking at my light bulbs like, the fuck is wrong with the lighting in here? And I almost went to go change the lights. I'm like
Oh my
lying to
God.
myself. I'm like, it's the lights. There's no fucking way. And I change the lights and I come back and I'm like, they're still fucking yellow. I go to a different bathroom and now I'm looking at different mirrors and I'm like, what the fuck? It's not going away. And I really started freaking out. Like my heart dropped when my eyes were yellow. And then I went and I'm like, fuck, my fucking liver is breaking down. And I went and I was shaking so, I was in such like fear of what was happening to me that I couldn't make this go away. Like I'm like, you fucked up, Mike. You fucked up now. There's not like there's no going back here. I don't know what the fuck you did, but you can't wash this out. And I went and grabbed a bottle of vodka and drank. I fucking sat there crying, almost like hyperventilating and trying to drink the feeling away, running from thinking I could run from the fact my eyes are yellow. And I'm drinking and I'm drinking and I'm drinking and I'm trying to forget. And I'm smoking a cigarette and I'm lighting another one and I'm lighting another one. Except now I got this shit in my eyes I can't run from no matter where I look. I could run from my feelings. I could run from all these other things. But now I'm looking at it right in the fucking mirror and I can't run. It was very scary. It was really scary.
And it must be hard for people to understand who haven't experienced alcoholism or addiction as to, if you're seeing all of those physical signs, why on earth would you still pick up a bottle? But by then I imagine you're physically dependent. So
I
you can't not
was
drink, right?
so I was so physically dependent on the alcohol. Like I had said, I dealt with withdrawals before, but I had never felt like this. When I would wake up, I'd wake up hyperventilating. I'd wake up withdrawing, like breathing, feeling like I'm gonna have a heart attack, and feeling like
Mm,
I need to run, like I need to take off somewhere. I gotta fucking get away from
mm,
here. Whatever I'm feeling right now, like I'm gonna die. I'm freaking out, sitting in my own skin. It's like my inner being's freaking the fuck out,
mm,
sitting in this body, and I'd be facing that, and
mm.
then the physical dependency, like the shakes, and my body started swelling up. I wasn't using the bathroom for over 2 weeks. When my eyes turned yellow, I stopped urinating. There was nothing coming out of me. There was nothing
Oh,
being
wow.
processed in me. I was throwing up like black blood. It was like called coffee grounds were coming out of my mouth. So I'm here dying. My organs are failing, and I'm spewing all this out into my sink. And I'm looking at a bottle of vodka, like, and about to have a drink. Like you said, who the fuck would do that? Well, in this moment where I'm I know I'm dying and I'm running from myself still. And the physical aspect of me almost even not being able to breathe without drinking, I don't think anyone understands the type of panic and the type of distraughtness that's going on. You're not even thinking clearly. And
Well, because you become delirious, don't you, when you're in those really end stages of liver failure? The brain fog is
it
quite
is when
intense,
the
isn't it?
hepatic encephalopathy sits in, when those toxins get into your brain because your liver is not breaking anything down, you start to I couldn't even tell reality at one point. I thought I was hallucinating with certain things that were going on. I was very paranoid, delirious, and just it just felt like a horrible nightmare. It was horrible, and I look back on how could I do that to myself? Like how could I when my eyes were yellow after I got myself together and I drank and I finally could breathe and I could pick myself up off the ground and I wiped my face off. I went in and ordered some liver pills off Amazon, and I put a pair of sunglasses on and I sat down on my couch and went to sleep. And it's crazy to be in that situation making those decisions, because no one in their right mind would choose to be in that position. It's like I was
Mm,
killing myself, you
mm.
know?
Yeah. Tell me about the day that you were taken to hospital.
The day I was taken to the hospital, my mother started freaking out. She hadn't heard from me in a couple of days, and she reached out to my son. My son picked up and came to check on me, and I was barely breathing in my guest room, very confused. I felt like I was dying in that moment. I felt like I was slipping, slipping away. There was really not much left in me. I really wasn't even, I didn't even have the strength to hold a drink at that time. I had been pretty much sleeping in a mess and like vomiting blood and kind of just confused in the state of reality that I was in. And when my son came in and checked on me and I could barely talk, then my mom got an ambulance, and an ambulance came. When they came, I didn't want to go. I I
It's
told them to stay,
crazy.
to get the fuck away from me. Like I'm not going. You can't take me. And I was like, I haven't done anything illegal. You can't just fucking take me. And I wanted to stay, and I wanted to try to get through it myself. I still thought I could get through this myself. And the one guy asked me, he's like, "The fuck is wrong with you, man?" He's like, "You're fucking dying." He's like, "Your fucking eyes are yellow. You're dying. You have to fucking come now." And I was even pleading with them to try to get a drink before I go with them. And I couldn't make it down the stairs. They slid me down on some kind of plastic mat because I was 270 pounds. Like I said, I wasn't using the bathroom. I was just blowing up, swelling up through these last weeks with fluids and all this stuff.
Wow. My gosh. And I imagine you can't remember a lot of what probably happened next because you were placed into an induced coma when you got to the hospital. How long were you under for?
Almost 3 weeks.
Wow. And what was the prognosis when you came out?
Hepatic encephalopathy, cirrhosis of the liver. They said I was going to need a new liver. They're like, your liver's done. But you don't qualify for a liver right now because in America you need to be 6 months clean from alcohol to qualify for a liver transplant. So when I woke up, my kidneys were better, but my kidneys were also failing. And I also had an infection going on in my blood that they couldn't figure out, which later came to be also from the alcohol, which was diverticulitis. It was like issues I was having in my colon that were also affecting my body. But when I woke up, I couldn't walk. I couldn't eat. I had to learn how to walk.
How long did that take? Like, was that a period of months?
I think in like 5, 6 weeks after I got home. COVID at that time,
Wow.
I just landed, so I couldn't stay at the hospital, so they sent me home. And at home is where I did a lot of my recovery from my couch. But it took about like 5, 6 weeks for me to be up and moving around. Plus, I had all that weight on me, and they had done a couple procedures where they drained me at the hospital from all the fluid. They had like cut these holes in my lower stomach where they put tubes on both sides and kind of drained massive amounts of fluid, that bile, and I don't even want to know what was coming out of me. I remember there was one nurse at the hospital. She went by my stomach. She went to go do something, and when she left, I went and touched there. And when I pulled my hand up, it was all like yellow, like glowing highlighter yellow ooze on my hands, and I was just like, wow. And that's like what was like pouring out of my stomach, and I was like, oof. I'm like, I'm not good, but I was still like really happy. I was just happy to be alive. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, of course. And was it that shock and that almost determination to stay alive that kept you sober after you got out? Like, what were you doing in terms of how am I going to actually not pick up a drink? Because, you were on death's door and you were still drinking. So what switch flipped for you to be able to come out of that experience and decide I'm not going to drink again?
I guess I found myself, my spirituality. The whole coma, being asleep, and the things I experienced asleep, sitting with myself, really brought me to a place of acceptance and surrender. And the whole experience, I feel like, that took place while I was asleep, or to what everyone thought I was asleep. To me, I had so much going on. But when I woke up, I just felt like I had processed 35 years of shit that I had been hiding from. I felt everything I'd always been running from. I felt it physically. I felt it spiritually. I felt the weight hit me like a fucking Mack truck of everything I hid from. And with that happening, finally allowed me to accept it and feel it and be grateful to have lived through it and make it out on the other side and appreciate being here and being given a second chance.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's that second chance at life, isn't it? Now, I think it's important to mention that relapse is is a really common part of a lot of people's stories, and this was also something that you did experience. So when you went into hospital in 2020, that wasn't the last time you drank. Can you share for our listeners what happened when you came out once you'd started to heal and recover? Where did things
So
go for you
once I
then?
started to heal and recover, I was still sitting in a purgatory, I felt like, of am I gonna live or am I not gonna live? How much time do I have here? What kind of quality of life am I gonna have after what I just did to myself? I was all over the place with not knowing what kind of future I had and how long my future was. And I started to go back into a lot of old thinking patterns like I got this. I just went through something really traumatic and I went through something heavy. And again, right, like who in their right mind would have a drink after what I went through. But I felt like I needed to at that time go through it, kind of face it because I was coming back out of being in a 10-year relationship and now I'm on like the dating scene again. Now I'm on a social scene again and
Mm.
everybody's out having drinks. It was very hard for me to step in that platform again of life, like this whole social scene and kind of be there sober. I was like, how the fuck am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do it? I don't know how I'm gonna do it.
Mm.
And then it turned out to where me and my buddy, we did like a trip that was like a bucket list trip and I drank. And in doing that trip and coming back, I'd say this was like a good like 2 month period that it was like where my focal point left, like my focus on everything of the outside of what had just happened to me left. And now here I am back focused on myself and my desires and what I feel like I want to do. And towards the going through that, it felt different this time drinking. It felt like there was nothing fucking there for me anymore in this place. Like I went back, I tried it. I'm there
Mm.
drinking with people, and as I'm like kind of engaging with myself, I'm feeling a little like sick with myself and disgusted with myself, and a little bit uneasy with myself. Like I know better. I just couldn't really
Mm.
dive in and just have a loose, blacked out, normal night and sit with it like I used to. And
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to go through that for me to be where I'm at today. Like I needed to have that reassurance that there was nothing there still that I wanted or I was looking for because at least like I don't try to for a long time I wasn't even trying to claim that I would never have a drink again. You know, I kept that area open in my authority and my choice and what I felt I wanted and what I wanted to do with it. But I feel like when these relapses happen or when they happen even to other people, it's like this is a moment that is not negative. This is like a shining moment for you to just reaffirm yourself. Because we all get in like a curious
Mm.
headspace where, especially with this being an addiction, like our minds go back to old patterns sometimes and we end up back at a crosswalk where we're like, is this what I want to do tonight? Do I want to go do this? Why am I feeling this? And it's like in that moment, I just hate to look at it as a horrible thing because the beauty that can come out of it is the reassurance, the reaffirmation that like, no, that's not for me. This is not what I wanted. This is like,
Mm.
and I just needed to be reminded of that. And now I'm back and fuck that. And, you know,
Yeah. And the knowledge that it's not a failure, relapse is a reality. And the most important part is that you come back and that you learn from that and you give yourself another chance at this
and you put
life.
like another like another stripe on your belt, like you're in jujitsu on there, like you've won another battle and you're back and you have more experience and more knowledge of the assurance that you need to know you're on the path you wanna be on. And I went through that a bunch of times. I went through that a bunch of times, and especially in 2020. And I went through it when my uncle passed. My uncle passed away in July of last year, and it was tough. And right around that time, I remember I wasn't hard on myself at all. I didn't beat my people around me were fucking hard on me, but I wasn't hard on myself at all because I knew in my head that as I don't want to sit with I don't want to sit with resentment with myself in a place where I feel like I'm forcing myself to do something. My sobriety is something
Mm.
I love to enjoy being a part of. I love to want to do. I love to enjoy the urge of being sober. And in the times for myself, when I felt off track with that, I just don't judge myself and I'm not hard on myself because that it just brings me to a counterproductive place when I'm too hard on myself and I sit and
Mm.
I beat myself up about shit. I'm just like, snap out of it, back on track, back on focus, smile. It's another scar,
Mm.
another war wound, and just another reminder of what I needed to be where I'm at.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's all life experience and it all forms part of this crazy journey that we're all on. So, Mike, what do you do today then to maintain your recovery? Like, how do you protect that?
Talking about it a lot, sharing about it a lot. It's sharing these things on social media. A lot of people have said like thank you for sharing this and I appreciate you sharing this, but I appreciate people watching it. I appreciate people communicating and having conversations with me about it. It's such a healthy place for my headspace to be in and stay active in, and it helps keep me sober. It helps keep me feeling. It helps keep me talking about what's going on in my life and something that I deal with. And nature is my thing. Since I stopped, since I almost died, I sit with like my spirituality very, very much. My spirituality is like the foundation of my sobriety, and with it, like I just enjoy being outside. I enjoy sunrises and all that kind of corny, cliche stuff. But it's really like the most amazing thing when you put like and therapy. So it's like all like therapy and talking about stuff. It's like if you feel it, talk about it. Say something. If you feel something,
Mm.
talk about it with anybody or get on. Sometimes when I don't have anybody to talk to, I'll get on my IG and I'll say it in my story, and I'll say what I'm feeling and then drop my phone and I feel better. But that's just me. But I feel like
Yeah.
it's the cliche saying, right? The healing's in the feeling. It's like you you feel it, you say it, you talk about it, like you
Yeah.
stay present in the moment, like you said, with everything that's going on. And
And I think what you just described then to me, like the overarching theme there with everything like nature, online community, and therapy, like it's all
mhm,
around connection. And that's how we stay sober is by staying connected. It's almost like plugging yourself back into the power source wherever you get that power from, as opposed to going back to a drink or a drug, which was like the old behavior, the old pattern. We have to replace it with something that's a healthier decision and something that's going to be better serving us in the long run. But that takes practice, and it also takes being prepared and being aware. Like one of the biggest things for me in my recovery is I'm every single morning I check in with myself and I think about the day ahead, and I work out, is there anything that I need to prepare for mentally, physically, spiritually, so that I'm not going to be caught off guard? Because, 3 years is still a really short time, in my opinion, to be sober. And when I compare it to 20 years of drinking. So I think it's just about also being accountable and being prepared for what life is going to throw up.
Absolutely. The whole thing you just said about plugging into something, that's what it is. And it's whatever works for you, like for me, it's therapy. For you, you find it in the AA, and it all is connection to something positive. If only somebody would have taught me this shit as a kid, because it really is like coping skills and knowing what to do when you're feeling a certain way. And it's so important. It's like, it seems so basic, but it's so important.
Mike, there's one final question that I love to ask my guests to close out the show. Now, the question is, what are your 3 non-negotiables that allow you to live a life that is happy, joyous, and free?
One is my therapy. I'm doing 2 types of therapy, and I wouldn't stop that. That's a non-negotiable for me. Another is my platform. It's like a therapy to me as well. It's something that serves me a lot of healing in letting me express myself creatively. So that's another one. And then my children. It's those 3. And probably my spirituality is on that list too. It would probably be
You can have 4.
my spirituality is on that list too. But those things are like at the core of day to day of what keep me up when everything's going wrong, when everything in life's kicking my ass, and I feel like I'm losing it and everything's wrong, and I'm like, why is life being like that? Those things are the things I look to and sit with that get me through all of it.
I love those. Thank you so much for sharing. Mike, I have loved our conversation today, and I'm so grateful that you've given us your time. If people want to find you out there, where can they go?
Jersey Mike with a Z on Instagram. Just go there.
Yeah, awesome. I'll make sure I pop that in the show notes, and I'll tag you in all of the Instagram posts. We say here on Behind the Smile that when we recover loudly, no one needs suffer in silence. So thank you so much for being so vocal and so open about sharing your story, Mike.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
A big thank you for tuning in today. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by clicking the subscribe button and leaving a review. Every review helps this podcast become more discoverable, meaning more people can hear these stories of strength and hope. Together, we will continue to remove the stigma around mental health, trauma, and addiction. Remember to reach out to those you care about, and I'll see you next time.